Prince Aelric and Princess Elara were the pride of the kingdom of Eldoria. Their father, King Aelric, ruled with a strong hand, maintaining peace through strategic alliances and diplomacy. As the only heirs to the throne, Aelric and Elara were not only siblings but the closest of friends, bound by a deep love and respect for one another. Growing up in the grand halls of Eldoria's castle, they shared dreams and secrets, always finding solace in each other's company amidst the weight of their royal responsibilities. As they came of age, the political machinations of the court began to intrude upon their idyllic relationship. King Aelric had arranged for both Aelric and Elara to marry into powerful neighboring houses to strengthen the kingdom's alliances. Aelric was to marry the daughter of the Duke of Verdun, while Elara was betrothed to Prince Tristan of Eldoria, a match that would solidify Eldoria's ties with the influential Asturian kingdom. However, Elara's heart belonged to another. During a diplomatic visit to the kingdom of Dragonfall, she had met King Darius, a brooding yet compassionate ruler who had recently ascended to the throne. In their stolen moments together, Elara found a connection that transcended duty and obligation. Darius, too, was captivated by her grace and intelligence, and what began as mutual admiration soon blossomed into love. But the betrothal to Prince Tristan loomed over Elara like a dark cloud. Tristan was a kind and honorable man, deeply in love with her, but her heart could not be swayed. She longed to be with Darius, to rule by his side in Dragonfall, but she knew that her father's plans could not easily be defied. The tension within her grew as the day of her wedding approached. The palace prepared for a grand celebration to honor the union that would strengthen the bonds between Eldoria and Astoria. Elara's heart ached with the knowledge that this celebration would mark the end of her dreams of being with Darius. After the feast, as the court celebrated late into the night, Elara made a fateful decision. She could not marry Tristan and live a life devoid of true love. With her heart racing, she slipped out of the castle, leaving behind a note for her brother. She fled into the night, determined to find her way to Dragonfall and to Darius, who had already made plans to elope with her. Elara's flight from the castle was swift and silent. With only the stars to guide her, she rode through the night on a horse she had secretly prepared, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The path to Dragonfall was treacherous, but her resolve was unshakable. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back. She knew that her actions would have consequences, but the thought of being with Darius, the man she truly loved, gave her the strength to push forward. By dawn, Elara reached the borders of Dragonfall, where Darius awaited her in a secluded glen. His face lit up with relief and joy as he saw her approach. Without hesitation, they embraced, and for a moment, all their worries melted away. They were together, and that was all that mattered. In a small chapel hidden deep into the woods, they exchanged vows in secret, pledging their lives to each other. The ceremony was simple, but heartfelt, witnessed only by the chapel's old priests and the towering trees that stood as silent guardians. With their marriage sealed, Elara and Darius felt a profound sense of peace, as if they had finally found the place where they truly belonged. But their happiness was short-lived. Back in Eldoria, King Aelric awoke to the news of his daughter's disappearance. The note Elara had left for Aelric revealed her intentions, but it did nothing to soothe the king's fury. To him, it seemed as though Darius had kidnapped his daughter, and he was determined to bring her back, not just for the sake of the alliance with Astoria, but to uphold the honor of his kingdom. Prince Tristan, heartbroken and humiliated, vowed to retrieve Elara and punish Darius for what he saw as a grave insult. With the full support of King Aelric and his father, the king of Astoria, Tristan began to assemble an army to march on Dragonfall. The air was thick with the scent of impending war, and the peaceful kingdom of Eldoria was suddenly plunged into turmoil. Aelric, torn between loyalty to his father and love for his sister, set out on his own to find Elara before blood was shed. He hoped to bring her back peacefully, to make her see reason before it was too late. As he rode through the familiar forests and fields, his heart was heavy with worry. He understood his sister's desire for love, but he also knew the cost of defying their father's will. The future of their kingdom hung in the balance, and Aelric knew that he had to act quickly to prevent disaster. Aelric's journey to find his sister was fraught with tension and uncertainty. As he rode through the dense forest that separated Eldoria from Dragonfall, he grappled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he understood Elara's desire to be with the man she loved. On the other, he was acutely aware of the consequences her actions would bring upon their kingdom. The prospect of war between Eldoria and Dragonfall weighed heavily on his mind, and he knew that his mission was not just to bring his sister back, but to prevent a full-scale conflict. When Aelric finally reached Drakenfall, he found Elara and Darius living in a small, secluded cottage on the edge of the kingdom. The sight of his sister, radiant with happiness but also tinged with fear, made his heart ache. She welcomed him with open arms, but Aelric could see the apprehension in her eyes. She knew why he had come. "Brother," Elara began, her voice trembling with emotion, "I know you've come to take me back, but I can't return to Eldoria. I love Darius, and we are married now. Please understand this." Aelric's heart sank at her words. He had feared this outcome, but hearing it confirmed was still a heavy blow. He looked at Darius, who stood silently by Elara's side, his expression resolute but also sorrowful. It was clear that he too understood the gravity of the situation. "Elara," Aelric said gently, "you know what this means. Father will see this as treason. If you don't return, there will be war. Darius and Tristan will be forced to fight, and many lives will be lost. I don't want that for you, or for our kingdom." Tears welled up in Elara's eyes, but she shook her head. "I can't go back, Aelric. My heart belongs to Darius, and I'll stand by his side, no matter the cost." Aelric felt a pang of frustration, but he also knew that his sister's love for Darius was genuine and deep. He could see that she had made her choice, and that there was no convincing her to return. His mind raced as he tried to think of a way to resolve the situation without bloodshed. Suddenly a thought struck him. "There may be another way," he said slowly, his mind working through the implications of his plan. Tristan and Darius could settle this through a duel, a battle to the death. It would prevent a full-scale war, and the victor would win your hand. Elara gasped at the suggestion, her eyes widening in shock. "Aelric, no. I can't bear the thought of Darius fighting Tristan. What if he doesn't survive?" But Aelric's mind was made up. "It's the only way to prevent a war, Elara. If Darius loves you as much as you love him, he will fight for you. And if Tristan is truly worthy of you, he will agree to the duel." Darius stepped forward. "I will fight for you, my love," he said firmly. "No matter the outcome, I'll protect you and our future together." Elara's heart ached with fear and uncertainty, but she knew that the decision had been made. The fate of their love and the future of their kingdoms would be decided on the battlefield. The news of the duel spread quickly through both Eldoria and Drakenfall, and preparations for the fateful day were made in earnest. The battlefield was chosen, a flat open plain that lay between the two kingdoms, where both armies could witness the duel without intervening. The tension was palpable as the day of the duel approached, with both sides bracing for the possibility of a devastating outcome. Elara's heart was heavy with dread as she stood with Aelric at the edge of the battlefield, watching as the two men she cared for prepared to face each other in combat. Darius, clad in the black and silver armor of Drakenfall, exuded a quiet confidence, though his eyes held a deep sadness. Tristan, in the gold and white armor of Eldoria, radiated determination, his love for Elara driving him to fight with everything he had. As the duel began, the air was thick with tension. The clashing of swords rang out across the field as the two men engaged in a fierce battle. Each was a skilled warrior in his own right, and the duel quickly escalated into a brutal contest of strength and skill. Aelric watched with bated breath, his heart pounding with fear for both men. He knew that no matter the outcome, the duel would leave a lasting scar on all involved. As the battle wore on, it became clear that both Darius and Tristan were evenly matched. Their swords danced in the air, each strike met with a swift parry or counterattack. The ground beneath them became slick with sweat and blood as they fought on, neither willing to yield. Elara's hands were clenched in front of her chest, her heart breaking with every blow. She could hardly bear to watch, but she knew that this was the only way to resolve the conflict that had torn their lives apart. She prayed silently for Darius' victory, but she also knew that Tristan was fighting with the same fervor for her love. The duel continued for what felt like an eternity, until finally, both men were gravely injured. Darius, bleeding from a deep wound in his side, staggered, but refused to fall. Tristan, breathing heavily, raised his sword for one final strike, but his strength was fading fast. In a final, desperate clash, both men dealt each other mortal blows, collapsing to the ground as their swords slipped from their hands. The battlefield fell silent as the reality of what had happened sank in. Both Darius and Tristan lay motionless on the ground, their lives slipping away. Elara's scream of anguish pierced the stillness as she ran to Darius' side, cradling his head in her lap as tears streamed down her face. "Darius," she whispered through her sobs, "please don't leave me. I can't live without you." But Darius' eyes were already dimming, his strength fading. He reached up to touch her face, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Elara. I love you." As Darius' hand fell limp, Elara's world shattered. She had lost the man she loved, and with him any hope of a future together. The weight of her grief was unbearable, and she collapsed beside him, her sobs echoing across the battlefield. Aelric knelt beside his sister, his own heart heavy with sorrow. He had tried to find a solution, but in the end, it had led to nothing but pain and loss. He placed a confronting hand on Elara's shoulder, but he knew that nothing he could say would ease her suffering. With both Darius and Tristan dead, the kingdoms of Eldoria and Astoria were left to grapple with the aftermath of the duel. The armies once poised for battle now stood in stunned silence as the bodies of the two fallen men were carried away. The duel meant to prevent a war, and instead left a void that could never be filled. Elara, devastated by the loss of Darius, returned to Eldoria with Aelric. The once vibrant and spirited princess was now a shadow of her former self. Consumed by grief and guilt, she had loved Darius with all her heart, and the knowledge that their love had led to his death was a burden she could not bear. Back in Eldoria, King Eldrick struggled to reconcile his anger with the reality of what had happened. He had been prepared to wage war to bring his daughter back, but now, with Tristan dead and his daughter's spirit shattered, he was left to question the cost of his ambitions. The alliance with Astoria was in ruins, and the once unshakable stability of his kingdom was now fractured. Elara withdrew from the world, unable to face the reality of her loss. She refused all offers of comfort or consolation, choosing instead to spend her days in solitude. The vibrant young woman who had once brought light to the kingdom was now a mere ghost, her heart hollow and broken. Aelric, who had always been close to his sister, was pained by her suffering. He tried to reach out to her, to offer her the support she was so desperately needed, but she remained distant, lost in her grief. The bond they had once shared was now strained, and Aelric feared that he would never be able to bring her back from the darkness that had consumed her. Years passed, and Alara's pain remained as fresh as the day she had lost Darius. She refused to entertain any thought of marriage or love, her heart closed off to the world. She spent her days tending to a small garden in the palace, where she had planted flowers in the memory of Darius. It was the only place where she felt a semblance of peace, though it was always tinged with sorrow. Aelric, now the reigning king, watched over his sister with a heavy heart. He had hoped that time would heal her wounds, but it seemed that the loss of Darius had left a scar that could never be erased. He vowed to protect her for as long as he lived, but he knew that nothing could fill the void in her heart. In the end, Elara's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the cost of love and the consequences of defying the expectations of the world. She had chosen love over duty, but in doing so she had lost everything. The kingdom of Eldoria continued to thrive under Aelric's rule, but the memory of the tragic duel and the loss of his sister's happiness cast a long shadow over his reign. Elara lived out her days in quiet solitude, never forgetting the man she had loved and lost. Her life, once filled with promise, was now marked by the emptiness of a heart that could never heal. She had found love, but in the end it had come at a price too high to bear.